Welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video, sponsored by Incogni, more on that later though, and I thought I'd set myself a challenge this week. The components available in Kerbal Space Program are classified into tiers, with the lower tiers only being very basic components, and the higher tiers being the more advanced tech. And I wondered, is it possible to build a single stage-to-orbit spaceplane using only the first 4 tiers of Kerbal Space Program's tech tree? And what's more, can we make it Minmus and Mun capable? As in, can it land on the Mun and Minmus on its mission? This is a pretty tall order. We obviously don't have any of the powerful jet engines available, only the tiny and borderline useless Juno engine, but we also don't have docking ports available for refueling. In fact, we don't even have solar panels, just batteries and the alternator inside the engine. So basically, seems impossible to only use tiers 1 to 4 without breaking out a solar panel and a docking port from tier 5, right? Well, wrong. I think I figured out a way to do this, and no Kraken drive or cheats or any other bamboozles. So have a little think for yourself and see if you can come up with a way of doing this mission as I have laid it out. But as you can see, the SSTO is pretty much coming together. There aren't really that many ways of building a spaceplane with the very limited number of parts available. As you can see in Kerbal Space Program, you can sort the parts by tech level. That's why I've got that filter there. So you can only use the ones from the tabs 1, 2, 3, and 4. Anything above that is not available to us. But yeah, I've always enjoyed kind of doing these low-tech challenges, but I don't think I've ever restricted myself to just tiers 1 to 4. I've always gone slightly into tier 5, usually to get a solar panel or a docking port or something, but not today. Today, we're doing things legit. Albeit it involved some rather cursed techniques. Maybe we can describe it as that, not quite sure. Anyway, just looking at it now, I guess the spaceplane is finished. I thought I'd just adorn it with some flag pieces, just to make it look a little bit nicer. What also makes it a bit nicer looking is I've got the Restock mod installed, which makes the parts look better. Because, yeah, when we crossfade into the gameplay in just a second, you'll see how beautiful KSP looks with all those visual mods we have installed. There is a full list down in the description, but let us crossfade across right now and look at that. You know, I still can't get over how good modded KSP1 looks. I still sometimes see comments from people asking if they should buy KSP2, and the answer is always no, no, no. Buy KSP1 and its DLCs and just enjoy the best game ever. Don't buy Kerbal Space Program 2. Another thing I wish people wouldn't buy, but sadly do, as it's disturbingly easy to do so, is your personal data. That's why you should be using Incogni, today's sponsor, if you aren't already. I use it myself, genuinely, because it's frankly essential if you have any presence online, as data brokers can amass shockingly accurate profiles of you based on your public records, online activity, and your shopping habits, and then they sell your profile to marketing firms, corporations, and your data can often end up in the hands of less savoury individuals. What's especially scary is that in the US, these people search sites will display your address, phone number, and legal history to anyone who wants to know, which is shocking. But the thing is, trying to remove your data yourself is impossible. There are so many data broker firms and people that they sell to that you'd have to keep contacting each and every single one endlessly forever. It'd be more than a full-time job. But Incogni handles all of it, reaching out to hundreds of brokers repeatedly, demanding your data be deleted, and following up with repeat requests automatically. And if there's a site not on Incogni's books, then their custom removals tool allows you to submit takedown requests to even more places. Stolen personal data fuels scams, fraud, and identity theft. And with breaches up 211% from 2023 to 2024, it's only getting exponentially worse. So now's the time to do what I and many others have done and join Incogni. Use my link in the description and code MATTLOWNE for 60% off their annual plan to keep your data where it belongs with you. And we are airborne. We're very aggressively airborne, I should say. We're taking a very, very steep ascent trajectory because this is what, I guess we could call this a rocket plane, right? It launches and lands like a plane, but for the ascent from Kerbin to Kerbin orbit, we're going to be flying more akin to a kind of a conventional rocket launch profile, because of course we're not using any air-breathing engines. Normally when I do SSTOs, I use the Rapiers, where you've got to build up speed close to sea level, then gradually climb, maximizing speed on the air-breathing mode of the engines, because that's the more efficient kind. But here, we just want to get out of the atmosphere as quick as possible, where the engine is at its least efficient. And as you can see, we're burning through our fuel reserves rather quickly. So how are we going to get all the way to... I chose Minmus in this case because the last SSTO video I did, I went to the Mun, so I thought, let's keep things varied, you know? So we'll go to Minmus for this one. But yeah, how are we going to get there? Well, keep watching, I guess, and you shall see. This is kind of a long video for just the Minmus SSTO, right? So there will be some tricks that we have to employ along the way, but you know, I think it's quite funny what I came up with. But yeah, just trying to think of things I could talk about during the ascent, but I feel like there aren't. I mean, I've done so many rocket launches on this channel at this point. I feel like I give that whole speech of excusing me of talking about the ascent by saying I do so many rocket launches on this channel, I've run out of things to talk about. I feel like I've now given that speech more than I have, you know, just discussed launch profiles of rockets. So I'm not quite sure what the moral to that story is. But as you can see, we have now passed the atmospheric border between the atmosphere and space. So now we are in space. We can go ahead and circularize. And we don't have much delta V left. Especially when you think about how much this burn is going to cost us against our current fuel budget. As you can see, we are circularized now. Not quite, actually. Let me just see. Why did I stop burning? Maybe it was so I could get a nice shot on the map screen of periapsis and apoapsis mid-switch, so we're as circular as we possibly can be. But we've only got 98 meters per second of delta V remaining, which means we're going to have to go back to the vehicle assembly building to construct the second vehicle in this video. But of course, we don't have the claw, we don't have any docking ports. How are we going to get this thing to refuel our SSTO? Well, you'll have to just wait and see, I suppose. So, yeah, we need to carry, like, basically this is going to refuel the SSTO. So, I'm kind of adding the same number of these little... So, these little fuel tanks is what comprise the fuel reserves of the SSTO. The SSTO has 10 such fuel tanks. So, you have 10 fuel tanks radially attached like that. So, I can keep track of the fuel that we need for this rocket versus the fuel that it's going to just, you know, save and not use itself to refuel the SSTO. I have this little service bay that's going to house some reaction wheels and batteries, and then we've got a little Taylor engine powering this upper stage. This is the stage that's going to maneuver this vessel to kind of get near the SSTO and commence the refueling process. And from there, I just sort of winged it a little bit. So I was looking at the delta V there. I was like, oh yeah, this upper stage is quite heavy. It might need a bit more fuel in that Terrier stage. And then when it came to constructing the actual rocket itself, which I think I was just messing around with the engine decoupler just there, trying to figure out what kind of length I needed for the node. There we are. I believe that's done. So now I basically just sort of guesstimated how much I would need. So we don't have fuel lines available to us because fuel lines, I believe, are in tier 5 of the tech tree. So we can't do fuel transfer, we can't do asparagus or onion style staging. Some of you might be saying, aha, Matt, but you could use the fuel flow priority thing, which is part of the advanced tweakables thing, and then you can get, you know, asparagus setups without the need for fuel lines. But if we were playing this in career mode or science mode, that wouldn't be available to us. That, like, fuel flow priority thing is only available if you have the fuel lines unlocked. So for the sake of this video, I'm not going to use them. Now, I thought the rocket would be done there. However, I then flew it and it didn't make it to orbit. So I wasn't quite sure how much more fuel or engines I would need. So I just decided to add more boosters. I just thought, oh, if we just add, let's say, 6 radially attached solid rocket motors, that should be enough to kind of give this thing the delta V it needs to reach low carbon orbit and rendezvous with our SSTO. So that's why kind of the rocket looks somewhat like it was designed, like there was some thought put into it. And then I just added these like sort of a sledgehammer approach. So I'm like, I just need to get this video done because this was kind of another time budget video. I had to take a bit of annual leave from work and I've been traveling about a bit for the past few weeks. So I haven't had much time in my office to film videos. Just thought I'd pause for a second whilst we launch this magnificent and very realistic, very human-looking rocket off the launch pad. Yeah, like I say, just the past few weeks I've been traveling. I've been doing like lots of activities that don't involve this YouTube job, so I haven't had much time. And this week it's my it's a close family member's birthday, so I'm traveling over to see them for the weekend. My sister is staying in my house to look after my cats, so they'll be fine, don't worry. But yeah, I won't be there. So I haven't had much time, but this is all going to come to an end after kind of the next week, basically. And I have some really cool projects lined up. I'm going to go to the black hole mod. Everyone's just, oh Matt, it's called this. I know what it's called. I've got it installed. I just haven't got around to like trying it yet. But it's that black hole system mod. Also, I've got a really fun Blunderbirds collaboration thing in the works. That's probably going to be next week's video if I can get it done on time. That's kind of a longer time sink, so we'll see. But yeah, for this week I was like, don't have a lot of time. I've got like a day to make this video, so I opened up my trusty notepad file of ideas I've had for Kerbal Space Program, and yeah, so this one, can you land on the Mun or Minmus using only tier 4 parts with an SSTO? And I guess, maybe, do you think this counts? You know, we've refueled it. You have to let me know if you feel that this counts or not. By the way, I know I said this thing doesn't use fuel transfer. You may be wondering, well, how come the central core has drained at a much slower rate than the outer boosters, which have now detached? That's because you might have missed it in the build time lapse, but I set the thrust limiter of the central engine to be like roughly a third of 100%, so 33%, around that kind of value, just because we don't need to be using, well, just so that it runs out of fuel slower than the surrounding boosters, basically. The central core is powered by the swivel engine rather than the Reliant engines that the outer cores are being powered by, or were being powered by. The Reliant is more powerful, but it doesn't have any gimbal ability. We kind of want engine gimbaling, some engine gimbaling to control the rocket better, so that's why the central engine was the swivel. And there you can see our little target indicators there are fairly close together, although we need to do a bit of an inclination change to get a rendezvous with the SSTO space plane. Yes. So that's that. There you go. I said earlier that I didn't really talk much about the ascent with the rocket plane, the SSTO. I guess both are technically correct terms. But there you go. I talked somewhat kind of about the ascent of the refueling rocket. But yes, comment below. Do you think this counts? Maybe, I don't know if it counts or not. I mean, technically SSTO, the only kind of qualifier there is it's a single stage to orbit. And it did very much make it to orbit okay. And it has enough fuel to deorbit itself and glide back to either the Kerbal Space Center's runway or just land anywhere. I equipped the SSTO, this is great, right? I'm talking about it when you can't even see it on screen. But the SSTO is equipped with a nose-mounted parachute just because the landing gear, it can't retract. It's just permanently deployed. And it's really, really, really weak to the heating of re-entry. So I wasn't sure if we'd end up losing the landing gear on Kerbal re-entry. So we have the little forward parachute as a backup. Whether or not we needed it, well, I'll keep that little. You gotta keep the viewer retention up. Gotta play the game. Gotta put the little, please like and subscribe thing on as well. You gotta don't hate the players, guys. Don't hate the players. Hate the game. Well, don't hate the game. Still watch my videos. Not really quite sure what I was trying to get at there, but hopefully it added some level of entertainment to me just playing around with the maneuver node maker, trying to get our encounter node with our target vessel a little bit closer. Probably not the most enthralling bit of footage to be narrating over, but by golly, we made an attempt anyway. So as you can see, I'm just killing off our speed relative to our targets here, and then we will then start refining our encounter, because it's such a big burn, we're not going to get a particularly close rendezvous. So once we've done this kind of major burn, we will then start doing the lazy way of getting to the target by just pointing towards targets, burning for a bit, pointing retrograde, killing off our speed, rinse and repeat until we are there. I don't think we've got a video. No, we haven't got a visual yet because we're miles away from it. But as you can see, as we continue burning towards it, we've got our separation nodes nice and close. What does that say? 1.4 kilometers, does that say? About that, but now we've killed off our speed relative to our target. Now we're going to point towards it and burn towards it once again. And look at those that separation drop to, well, 0. It kind of oscillates between 0 and 0.2 as I drop in and out of physics time warp. But the point is, we're very close. In fact, we have a visual on the target. So now comes the part where I give you the little secret as to how we're going to transfer our fuel from our fuel tanks on the refueling tanker, how we're going to move that onto the SSTO. And the secret is, guys, I'm not going to transfer the fuel at all, in fact. I am. But before I do that, we must first transfer the fuel tanks. So that's how I'm going to do it, because as you can see, we have the little, I don't know what it's called, the Soviet-style command pod that comes with the making history DLC, because it has a space for 2 Kerbals. One of the Kerbals we have is an engineer, and he can just take the fuel tanks off our refueler, which is now drifted away a little bit, so we're going to have to quickly switch back to the refueling craft and maneuver it back towards the SSTO space plane again. Yeah, he's going to basically unweld them from the refueling tanker, weld them to the spaceplane, and then when they're attached to the spaceplane, of course, they are now attached, so we can transfer fuel from them into the spaceplane, and then obviously this probably counts as adding a stage. Then the engineer Kerbal can simply then remove them from the spaceplane once again, leaving nary a trace they were ever here in the first place. So basically, this is just the dumb way of getting around the whole we haven't got docking ports or the claw, to transfer fuel. This is the only way we can do it. And doesn't this thing just look like some sort of eldritch, the eldritch SSTO? Is that a good term? I don't know. So yes, obviously horrifically unrealistic, and I don't think this would even work if this were Kerbal Space Program's career mode, because you need, well, I don't know what kind of star level you need on an engineer to be able to do the EVA construction. I guess you probably could, right? People who play career mode, let me know if this would actually be possible in KSP career mode down below. I don't know what the star level is for the engineer to not only be able to go on EVA, but also do EVA construction. But I guess you probably could just do like odd missions that kind of get them leveled up, even if it's really grindy and wouldn't be how you would play the game sensibly. I don't know. But I just don't find KSP's career mode any fun in the slightest, which is why I've never really cared to play it much. Maybe I should give it a go, right? Considering I, make a living playing this game. Would be nice to maybe try all of its modes. That's weird to say. Like, I haven't even 100% of the game, technically. There's like a whole section of this game that's got a really dedicated, like, fan following that I just have no interest in, basically. I think part of it was because when I got the game, it was still in early access and career mode hadn't been added. And then they added career mode, and I was like, cool, this sort of sucks. So then I just went back to playing sandbox and science mode. And then now like 10 years has gone by. So that's that, really. So yeah, just slowly making sure we don't send the SSTO into a spinner. I think we're pretty much, matched speeds with the two craft. So we can start taking our now empty peripheral fuel tanks off the SSTO and put them back on the refueling craft, where we could deorbit them, not leave them stuck in space. Now, welding the first one to the craft did then make it move, but luckily it moved into the SSTO, and then the SSTO sort of stopped it in its tracks. It's still drifting very slowly, but obviously it's drifting slow enough that this wasn't really an issue. And look how it's got like two little wings. But yeah, part of the reason why I attached the fuel tanks so haphazardly to the refueler was, well, A, it doesn't really matter how they're attached because we're going to stage them before they become an issue. And B, because the two craft are sort of slowly drifting apart from each other, I didn't want one of the craft to kind of exit EVA construction range of the other, if that makes sense. So then Bill Cummins couldn't then continue welding the fuel tanks to the refueler. But there we are, the refueler has been deorbited, so we can go ahead, now we've entered the atmosphere, we can stage our little fuel tank. Well, I guess we've staged the fuel tanks, but we've staged the crew pod. These crew pods have ablator built into them, don't worry, so we're not going to burn up on re-entry. They will barely use a fraction of our ablated material as we deploy the parachute. And coming down, what biome is this? The grasslands biome on Kerbin. And here we are. There we go, parachute now deployed. And just coming down for a nice, graceful touchdown. And there we go. Kind of would be nice to see this thing during the day, so let's just go ahead and time warp. Forget about Jebediah Cohen stuck in his little Mercury capsule on that SSTO. And there we are, and obviously this lovely ground scatter is thanks to the Parallax Continued mod, great visual mod. So let's now pan away from that landed vessel and get back to the main event, which is of course our SSTO rocket plane, now fully refueled. So we have 3,591 meters per second of Delta V budget. So we could easily do a Mun landing. I'm going to go ahead and do a Minmus landing because I don't know. I've got a soft spot for Minmus. I don't know why. I think it's because it's like the first it's the first celestial body and I think a lot of people landed on. So it's always got a special place in my heart. The first time I got a little Kerbal out on another world, seeing the gravity be different, deploy a flag. How I yearn for my youth. Maybe it should be having an existential crisis, which is why I like Minmus so much. But either way, we now have an encounter with it. We are now going to pass within its sphere of influence. A little bit far away, though, so we're going to do a mid-course correction burn, as is usually standard when going to Minmus, because it's on a slightly inclined orbit around Kerbin. So we've now set that maneuver node. So now what we need to do is keep an eye on our electric charge. That's going to be that was the worrying thing. I wasn't sure if we would end up running out of power on this mission because, of course, we don't have a solar panel. But I added 4 small batteries there to give us 350 units of electricity, which I figured would probably be enough. The only time it's going to become an issue, potentially, will be when we go back to Kerbin. We'll have to do some aero brake passes through the atmosphere, which will require SAS control, which will drain our electric charge. So that was the one thing I was a little bit concerned about. We can recharge our batteries, though, because the Reliant engine we have there does have an alternator. So when we ignite our engine, it will recharge our batteries. So that's why, in case you're wondering how our electric charge goes down, but then comes up despite not having any fuel cells or any solar panels. That's how. See, now we start burning our engine. We're now at 350 full capacity electric charge once again. And of course, now that we've done that burn, we are circularized at Minmus. Now, because this thing is so small and light, and it has a reaction wheel on board, the actual SAS control that we have can basically reorient this thing from a landed position to an upright, a horizontal position on the surface to an upright position just using SAS control. So we didn't really need to land on the Minmus flats because we don't need to take off horizontally like a normal SSTO might need to, but I don't know, I just like the flats. So going back earlier, the Minmus flats just a very nostalgic place to me, and a really thing of beauty with the all the visual mods I've got added to this game, like Parallax Continued and BlackRack's TUFX, make the Minmus flats look really, really nice. So there they are, coming into view. And of course, because we have a really, really powerful engine, this engine is designed to be a first stage engine when you leave Kerbin. So for landing on Minmus, it's extremely overpowered, so it's very easy to kill off all of our speed. Before touchdown, I thought just before touching down on the engine bell, we do a little bit of a hover, or kick up I should say, reorient horizontal, and touchdown on our wheels, which thankfully didn't get overstressed and explode or anything. And there we are, touched down on the surface of Minmus. Now you might notice at the very beginning of this video when I first loaded the craft in, it was just rolling forwards on the runway. The reason it was doing that and why now we're on the surface of Minmus, it's rolling forwards once again, is because I didn't realize this until making this video, but those landing wheels do not have brakes. So this thing cannot really stop on its own. So good thing I have that parachute on it really. The parachute, I only added it to be there in case of emergency, but might come in handy now if we do end up landing on our wheels. If they don't explode, it'll be handy to slow down, come to a stop on the runway. But we'll have to see how well that plan goes as we continue, as you continue watching this video, hopefully. So I thought just, it'd be nice if the SSTO could come to a stop. So Jebediah Kerbin decided to use his little old noggin trying to slow down the craft, and I guess it kind of worked, sort of. Maybe. I don't really know why I was so bothered about the craft coming to a complete stop. I just feel like, just for completeness' sake, we come to a stop at a touchdown on Minmus, and then we depart again without the craft just sort of rolling constantly. I don't know, it seemed really important at the time, but I guess on reflection, it probably didn't really matter a great deal that the craft was in motion. I guess because, this is an icy surface, right? This flat area made all reflective by my various visual mods, so, yeah, anyway, let's get ready to take off. So I know I said earlier in this video that the strength of our reaction wheels on board are they're strong enough basically that we could put ourselves in a vertical position using just SAS and then launching vertically, but that's just not quite as cool, is it, than, launching horizontally like an aircraft, because this is, of course, an aircraft. You saw it launch from the Kerbal Space Center right at the very beginning of the video. So, I don't know, I guess we landed on Minmus horizontally, right? Just before we touched down vertically, we flipped horizontal, so it's kind of cool to then take off horizontally, and I feel like it's a bit more realistic, in the sense that, SAS wheels in real life probably aren't that strong. They wouldn't be able to just right the craft just by using reaction wheels. We would need to have some sort of engine throttle or motion. I don't know. This isn't a very realistic video, is it? When we think back to how I managed to refuel it by just whacking a load of like 10 separate fuel tanks onto this haphazardly, and then they could just magically transfer fuel. So I guess I shouldn't really be using the realism angle when describing really any aspect of, not just this video, but I guess most of my videos, they're not really that realistic, are they? One thing, maybe this is a video idea, and you guys can let me know, but one idea I had for a video in the future, because, I want to do lots of, like, big scale missions, like, interstellar mods and stuff, but sometimes I'm just one person doing this. I haven't got any employees, I don't have a video editor or anything like that. I'm just one person, this is not my full-time job. reality is that I will not always be able to do these grand scale missions every single week. Sometimes it'll be smaller scale stuff, a bit like this mission, I guess. And one of my ideas I had for weeks where I really don't have much time to make a video, so it has to be smaller in scope and scale, is doing like a realistic Duna mission, i.e. we do a standard kind of Matt Lounge Duna mission, so going from Kerbin to Duna, circularizing at Duna, doing a surface landing on Duna, and then maybe doing an Ike landing as well. But the caveat is that it has to be launched on realistic launch vehicles that wouldn't look out of place on the planet Earth. So normally my launch vehicles, I think a lot of KSP players are guilty of this, we have this habit of building really, really large fairings, like really, really tall fairings, then having the entire craft there in one launch. But in reality, fairings aren't that big. Look at Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. You know, Falcon Heavy has, in theory, a very high launch capacity, but it's got a really small fairing size. That's obviously one of the issues that Starship aims to remedy once it starts working like SpaceX wanted to. But yeah, so kind of doing like a kind of mission to Duna, having to do lots and lots of launches, like 5 launches to assemble the interplanetary craft in low Kerbin orbits, and each module of that craft is kind of proportional and realistic, a bit like the plan that me and Bearded Penguin did when we did our esports event back in 2023. We built this Falcon 9 replica and built an interplanetary vessel that could get us from Earth to Mars, and it had to do this all kind of like in realistic proportioned modules, right? Because it had to be launchable on Falcon 9. So that was kind of a fun challenge, and I think it might be nice to try and recreate, but you know, I won't have the constrained time to do everything in 24 hours, so we can make things a bit more exciting. I don't know. Anyway, as you can see, I'm doing some aero brakes here to slow ourselves down without relying on our engine, even though we have loads of Delta V remaining, so I probably didn't really need to do this. So you might be wondering why I'm re-entering like this, as in like backwards, normally when you re-enter in KSP, because, you know, you want to mimic how the space shuttle re-entered, right? You would sort of go in belly first. But, as I mentioned earlier, the weakest part of this vessel are those 3 landing wheels. They've not got very much heat resistance at all. And so those are the parts that are most likely to explode when we re-enter. So I'm re-entering backwards like this, so that we're sort of shielding the wheels, if that makes sense. Kind of unrealistic in that the window of the command pod is kind of taking the brunt of the re-entry heating, but you know, it was, as you can see, it was all fine in the end. And now we're in a much lower orbit. Hopefully our re-entry speeds will be low enough that when we do our final re-entry, where we will need to be re-entering, I'm doing the air quotes thing now properly so that we do land on our wheels, they won't overheat and explode, basically. So at this point, I was considering, you know, coasting up to apopsis, circularizing our orbit, and then deorbiting ourselves such that we were on a good descent trajectory to reach the Kerbal Space Center. But it looks like I've had this happen quite a lot recently. Luck has had it where our kind of current ballistic trajectory is sort of taking us sort of over the Kerbal Space Center as it is. So I decided, well, see, we could just glide there without doing any more correction burns. That means I don't intend to fire the engine again. Because it's one thing to like fire the engine in space, kind of, okay. But I don't really want to have to fire the rocket engine in the atmosphere, even though that's literally what this engine is designed for. It just feels wrong. It's like, you know, it would be like reigniting the space shuttle main engines after it re-enters Earth's atmosphere to get it back to the runway. Obviously, in real life, the space shuttle had the external fuel tank, but in KSP, a lot of space shuttles... Anyway, I'm just saying, it just felt wrong, you know? So we're going to try and get back to the runway only using gliding. So gliding. As you can see, we've got 3 kind of, you know, sinister-looking temperature gauges showing up on our 3 landing wheels, but as you can see, they survived. So yes, I kind of teased earlier that, oh, will we, won't we? Of course we did, guys. Come on, what do you take me for here? We play for keeps here at Lowne Aerospace, do we not? Now you can see we're not flying in the smoothest of fashions here, because as you can see, our surface speed is quite high, and I wanted to slow down as much as possible before touching down for 2 reasons. Firstly, I didn't have that much faith in the integrity of our landing wheels, so I thought they might explode if subjected to too much kind of force. So we'll be slowing down, or landing I should say, touching down as slow as possible. And also, as I mentioned earlier, this thing does not have brakes, so we kind of want to be coming in slow. I mean, obviously we have that parachute, which ended up coming in handy. Like, I had no intention of using this parachute. It was only there in case of emergency and the wheels exploded. I knew I didn't have much time to make this video, so like, we have an emergency means of landing if our landing gear literally cannot withstand the force of re-entry. But as you can see, they were able to survive, and we could still use the parachute to come to a stop. in theory, as you can see, we're still slowing down. Very, very slowly. Look at that electric charge, 115 out of 350 remaining. So I think I got the battery number sort of right. I just arbitrarily thought 4 would be, or 3 I should say, would be a good number, and I guess it was. I've sped the footage up here because it's taking so long for the craft to slow down, and now the parachute sort of cut itself. And we started speeding up again. So I tried turning around to see if we could stop ourselves this way, and we couldn't. So then I decided to get Jebediah coming out and EVA once again. He's trained for this moment, right? He trained on Minmus, lower surface gravity, trying to stop the craft with his head. Now he's doing the real thing. He's just going to wait. Oh. There we go. Oh, now it's running the other way. Jeb, do you want to just waddle your way around and try again? Stopping it again. I don't really know why this was so important to me. It just felt like, yeah, the craft has to come to a stop on the runway, right, to, formally conclude this mission. But I think, as it has now stopped, we can indeed formally conclude this mission, and therefore we can give big thanks to the names on the right-hand side of the screen, my patrons and YouTube channel members. Sincerely, your support is always appreciated. Also, massive thank you to Incogni, our sponsor, once again. They've supported me so long. This channel will always be grateful for Incogni's continued support. So do check out the link in the description below. But that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.